Hello, my name is Joshua Plick, and we're going to cover how to do basic front-end validations in React. There are two significant bits of value that you get from doing front-end validations as opposed to back-end validations, or actually it's better to do them in conjunction, do front-end validations and back-end validations. And the primary one is you get immediate feedback. Well, it's not the primary one, they're both great, but you get immediate feedback when your form is invalid. It's instant feedback. There's no reason for the user to leave the page because your backend is down or taking forever to load. So it reduces a failure vector in your application in regards to networking. Finally, this is a bigger one. Well, not even, I keep saying bigger, but a really good thing that this does is it reduces your number of backend API calls. Because normally in servers, in either full stack development, the front end sends its payload to the back end says, no, this data is not in the correct format, and then it sends it back to the front end saying, hey, like these are the validation errors. If you can validate on the front end before it ever goes and makes an API call, you get to reduce your server load and possibly reduce your costs in the cloud. So I'm going to show you what our project will look like eventually. We're going to be implementing three ideas. We're going to require the name, email, password, and password confirmation fields. We're going to require that the passwords match and that the person's name has a minimum of 3 characters. So we'll try and initially submit this form. You have to fill out a name. Hey, you forgot your email address. Put in something and then it says, hey, that's not a valid email address, josh@example.com. Put in a password confirmation. Hey, your passwords don't match. Hey, your name is not longer than 3 characters, so we'll make the passwords match. And then, we have a bug in the production version where when you actually do have correct passwords, it doesn't recognize it, but we'll see. Maybe we can debug it while we're implementing this from scratch. All right, so let's get started. So we go to the repo, github.com, clickjoe, basic front-end validations of React, clone it via that URL. I've already got it cloned to my computer in the version that is ready for implementation. It's not in this final version yet. It's in the version that needs help. So we'll start up my text editor, which is Vim and tmux. I'll restart Vim real quick. And I'm not sure if I have any node servers running. Let me kill all node. And let's start yarn start. Alright, we are up and running. And this form does none of those things. Well, actually, it kind of does. Well, let's get started. Let's look at the app.js file. It doesn't do anything, really. In general, you want to keep your app.js very lean because it's the single source of truth. That's where every other file gets loaded. So you want to keep it as lean as possible, extract as much logic as possible outside of your app. So we created our own component file for our form. So let's jump over there. All it is at this point is just static HTML. So we need to add functionality to it to add the behavior that we're looking to add in regards to adding requirements or adding front-end validations. So the first thing that we're trying to achieve is requiring the name, email, password, and password confirmation fields. So the good news is this is really easy to do in modern browsers because browsers actually have a required flag that you can put on your inputs and it'll give you a ping, like for this one right here. It says, hey, your email address is invalid. So we'll just go in there and the best code is no code. The reason why the best code is no code is because no code has a 100% chance of having no bugs. So if we can use the browser implementation, if that's okay with our designers, let's just throw that on all of our inputs. So there's 4 inputs: the email address, the name and the password confirmation. I've added this 3 times. Okay, so I'll do it the 4th time. Page refreshes, it complains. So I'm getting an email validation on the name form. I have a small issue with my name form. It needs to be in, this input is of type email. It needs to be changed to type text. So boom, it complains about the email address. I fill it out. And you actually get email out of validation out of the box if you use the browser, which is excellent. Keep submitting, password, cool. So we'll move on to the next task, which is requiring that the passwords match. So to achieve that, we will actually need to convert this function form into a class form, because we are going to use state. All right, just pulling up my notes. So throw this guy in there. Class form extends react.component. That should be it. So we'll need some state. So the initial state of the form is going to be that, hey, we don't have any errors. So, and then we'll mutate the state later. So this empty array represents that we have no errors currently in the form. So interestingly, since we're also on React version 16.2, ever since React 16.3, we've gotten access to the create_ref API. So I'm going to write it out and then we're going to explain it as we go. So React.create_ref has been able to reduce the amount of boilerplate in React code significantly. What create_ref does is it creates a reference to a DOM node. So I can make these references, I can throw them on these inputs, and when I submit the form, instead of having to add like a handle change function for every single input in my form, I can just have a reference and actually target the DOM directly and get access to the value of that input. I'm going to rename these guys email, change this guy to password, and password confirmation. So now that we've created these references, they're not lined up with anything. Right now they're just sitting in this class. We need to throw them onto the inputs themselves, and we do that through an HTML attribute. We just say ref, this.nameRef, ref, this.emailRef, ref, this.passwordRef, and finally, ref, this.password confirmation ref. So right now, when we submit this form, oh, we have a small bug on the form. Ah, I see the issue. We're using return still as if it's a function or a stateless component. This needs to actually become a render function now. Oh, snap. Your render method should have a return statement. Oh man. I saw it at the bottom of my text editor, right here. Or well, right there. Your render method should have a return statement. That's nice. Return. Highlight it or re-indent it. We should be able to load. What I want to show you is that the form is actually submitting. So standard browser form submission behavior. Oh crap. Standard browser form submission behavior is that actually refreshes the page after submit. We need to get rid of that. So we'll throw it on submit here, and then we'll make reference to this dot. Let's just say sign up. Let's call it sign up user. equals, this up with brackets, that's sign up user, so we throw in a sign up user arrow function, and we should get, oh, this is the arrow, console.log sign up. So to prevent the form from actually submitting, which is standard behavior for a browser, what we're going to do is we are going to event. So when this onSubmit handler is called, it'll actually send the event up to this function when we have access to it. So event.preventDefault, and that should prevent the form from submitting. When we hit it, and we should see the console.log sign up to confirm that it's working. Let's check it out. Email address. Actually, you know what? We keep having to type these things out because we added all these required flags. We're going to take them out for the time being. We're trying to be clever, and it's actually making our process much slower than it needs to be. So now we can just go directly and hit sign up and see if we hit the console. Yes, we did. Great. So now that we have signed up the user, we need to actually validate the inputs. So we've got our references, we've put them into our inputs, and now we need to actually use said references. So let's make a little user object, and then let's throw all the references together, which will be all the attributes, which will be the name, email address, password, and password confirmation. So the name attribute will refer to this.nameref. And to get the actual value, because remember, we don't want the reference to the actual input. We want the current value of the input. So the syntax for that is the reference, and you type .current.value. And that will actually give you the current value of the form as the form was being submitted. Email, password, and password confirmation. So let's console.log this to confirm that we have this correct. So we submit the form, throw in some stuff. You saw it. You saw it. I saw it submit the form, but it we took out the prevent default. That's what happened. So if we add it back, we submit the form, it should not wipe out. And yes, now we're getting correct state. All right, at this point, now we want to actually send this user to a separate validate function. The reason why we want to make it a separate function is because we want to keep our functions essentially down to doing one thing at a time. So we open up the validate function. We'll also make this guy an arrow function. It takes in a user object, arrow, and to validate it, what we'll do is we'll do the second part of our instructions, which is requiring that the passwords match. So we have a user. If the user's password is not equal to the password confirmation, then I want you to change the state of our errors here. So we're going to have a few different validations in here. So what I want to do is change the state only at one point. I don't want to this.set state multiple times in this method. So what we'll do is we'll just create an array of validation errors, set it to an empty array, and then if there are any validation errors, we'll just add on, bolt on our error messages into that array. So if the password doesn't match, your password does not match. And then now to confirm that we need to set the state of the errors essentially. So we'll just do this dot set state errors validation errors. Let's just confirm that this does this console.log validation errors when the passwords don't match. Let's confirm that. Oh, this is a JavaScript object. Consolo. Okay, we got our name, and we just need to make sure that we are logging when the passwords do not match. Your password does not match. We're logging that. Now we need to actually display that to the user. So the way we did that before is we displayed a yellow alert here. Your passwords do not match. So we'll do the same. We'll do the same in this app. So we'll add a function, render errors, and it will also be a function, and it will take, no, it doesn't take any parameters because it's going to be reliant on state. So what we need to do is we need to return a div with that alert in it. So we want something along the lines of div class name alert warning, and let's just throw something in there for now to just make sure. Oops. So to actually render this onto the form, what is it complaining about? Expected assignment of function call and instead saw an expression. Return. I think that's what I have to do. Okay, yeah. You have to return one thing. So we're going to throw this right underneath Ridiculous Tech Tips newsletter. So let's throw this there. Render errors. And this should say, oops, render errors is not defined. We need to refer to the context of this to get access to that function. We have oops. Excellent. So we need to loop over all the errors and display their error messages. So we will do this.state.errors.map, and then we'll have access to the error. We also need the index, because when you're mapping over something in React and rendering it, it wants each baby element to get its own unique key attribute on the HTML. I'll show you what that means. So span, put a key attribute on there, which will be the index, which will always be unique because the index it always starts at 0 and it keeps going up forever. So span key index, and then throw the error, because the error is going to be just a pure string. Close that out. And I think this is incorrect syntax, but no. Close out the map. Close out the this. That can't be right. Return. Expected token. Expected. This dot errors. This dot state. Dot errors. Dot map. Open. Oh, I gotta open the map. And then this becomes, close that there, close that there. I think that's correct. False. JSX value should be either an expression or a quoted JSX text. An expression. Maybe I have to put this in parentheses. Oh, this needs to be curly braces. So we have oops still. Oh. So now we have an empty div. This needs to have a guard clause where if there are no errors, aka it has no length, I just want you to return nil or null and get out of here. This way, if there are no errors, don't show me anything. And then if the passwords do not match, error, that's not right. It needs to be dynamic. Let's try this. Boom. All right, password did not match. How about the final step, which is require that the person's name is a minimum of 3 characters. We'll just add another validation in here. I'll get rid of our console log. I'm going to make this one line. I don't know. It's probably too long to be a line, but it's fine. Username, if the user's name is less than or equal to 3, I want you to push user's name. Your name is too short. That's probably not the best. You know, that's pretty aggressive texting, but what can you say? In general, we want to avoid having, these are called magic variables in programming. We want to give every variable a name, or every number a name, so that the next developer coming behind us has some context of what that number was. So minimum, we'll call this minimum name length equals 3. Now that gives much more context to that 3, because otherwise, what the heck does 3 mean? And it's going to have to be this dot minimum name length, and this is our production version. It did not work. Did I save? If username is less than or equal to, maybe I have it backwards. No. Huh. If user dot name is less than, let's throw a debugger in there. I don't understand. What's the problem? User.name should be A. This dot minimum name length. Oh, I need a length. I'm comparing a number to a letter. User.name.length. Perfect. Come on. What in tarnation? So, boom. And then if we have one issue here where this needs to be on a new line. So we'll add a break at the end of the line. We ran into an issue here where adjacent JSX elements must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. So if it's saying that because I've got this span open here, it's looking for the exact opposite. Since I've opened this element with the span, it needs to close with the same tag. It can't just have a tag, this BR hanging in the space. Now, I don't know if this is valid HTML, but this is what I'm going to go with. I'm going to throw the BR inside of the span. And let's see if we've got our things. So perfect. We've achieved 2 and 3 of our objectives, so all we have to do is add those required back to our HTML, and we will have achieved front-end validations at a a basic level in React. All right. So complain, hey, fill me out. Or you don't have a correct structure. So I'm going to say ASDF, ASDF. Your name is too short, and we're valid.